What is up, Bruin Nation? When I tell you that game was drunk, it was absolutely blackout hammered. And one of the all-time wins I have seen as somebody that follows the program. We got my boy, the Madman, back on the pod today. And boy, is he lined up for an absolute doozy after this game. An unbelievable win for UCLA at the buzzer. Donovan Dent, shades of the great Tyus Edney. I have been screaming in my apartment for the last 20 minutes, Madman. How are you? How's it going? I'm out of words. How are we doing, brother? This is the biggest win in a long time.
Oh, my God, Thriller. Oh, my God. What a game to cap off. What a week with UCLA basketball. I mean, for this to happen in the fashion that it did, I mean, where to begin here with this game, Thriller? I mean, to start the game down 33-10, and it looked like just this was going to be a bludgeoning of what we saw earlier this week. Illinois got whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. 33-10, about 11 minutes into this game, 10 minutes into this game, and you're thinking, what is happening? Are we witnessing the unraveling of this program right before our very eyes? And then a funny thing happened on the road to Pauley Pavillion's, epic finale here. Bruins started hitting some shots. I mean, I've never seen a game, Thriller, where 11 straight misses was followed by 11 straight makes. I mean, you and I have watched basketball a long time. I have never seen double-digit consecutive misses by a team followed by double-digit consecutive makes. And, then this team started finally running out on the three-point line. I thought it was just the coverage was way too soft early. Illinois got way too many uncontested threes. But the moment you started running out on that three-point line, pressuring them a little bit to either put it on the deck, kind of sidestep and have to sort of deal with that, or kick it in, drive and then kick it back out. The moment there was a little bit more resistance, this thing became an absolute doozy, Thriller. I mean, holy cow. And we thought we had it in regulation. And then, going into overtime, you started getting the shades of that Indiana game of like, oh, did we miss our opportunity? The tip in, the rebounding was such a challenge late in this game. And then, Illinois gets another offensive rebound. And then Dent goes coast to coast, Thriller, to cap it off. I mean, oh my goodness. I'm so happy for Donovan Dent in particular. Just everything that he's been through this year, all of the expectations, all the criticism, for him to hit that game winner on the road to a 15-assist game against a top 10 team. This is now a second top 10 win, Thriller, and all UCLA's got to do now is, as long as they can win the games they're supposed to win, this is a team that should be tournament bound. Between the Purdue win and now between the Illinois win, this is a game, a resume-defining, season-defining game. And Thriller, I got to just give a couple of shout-outs here. I mean, I thought one of the unsung heroes of this game was Xavier Booker, to be honest with you, because in that 33-10, that initial starting point, he hit a couple of those threes. He hit that, 15-foot shot. He's the guy who started where the offense kind of really opened up. Then Perry was able to do his thing. Then Bilodeau was getting a little warm. And then obviously Daly had such a magnificent second half, before fouling out. But man, I think Booker's play, particularly early in that run, and then very much down the stretch on that tip back, and just all of these plays was absolutely phenomenal. And Dent, as the orchestrator, could not be more proud of this group, Thriller, to gut this one out and get that second top 10 win.
Yeah, and let's unpack it, man, because that 33-10, it was a 20-0 run by the Fighting Illini.
Yep.
I'm looking at my television screen going, I don't know how much more I could watch. We had gotten the brakes beaten off us by 30 by the Michigan Wolverines. We lost a embarrassing game at the Breslin Center all the way around, where Jamerson's getting thrown out of the game. Just didn't look like UCLA basketball. And it really didn't look like UCLA basketball when you're down 33-10. The rallying of this team. I was so impressed. And it makes no sense that Donovan Dent hits that layup up and under, because I'll be honest with you, Madman, there were 6 layup attempts that he had today where he cannot finish around the basket. And he was getting his teammates involved, 15 assists. He was outstanding. But for him to kind of just go coast to coast like that, with the game on the line, the $3 million man, as we talk about consistently on this podcast, that's an all-time moment, an all-time comeback for UCLA. Illinois fans, they're getting shades of what they experienced with Arizona back in the 2005 NCAA tournament, where Arizona blows a 9-point lead with, I think, a minute and a half left in that game. It was unbelievable. You mentioned it was Xavier Booker, too. Just the growth we've seen from him this season and what he's able to do. And we talked about it after the Michigan game. The Ade Mara thing has not been great for Mick in UCLA. But what he's got in Booker is a young big that he is developing. And you're seeing that play out. 5 of 10 from a 7-footer from three-point range is very, very impressive. I'm really excited about the prospects of Booker coming back next season with a second year under this coaching staff. I think that'll be very, very fascinating to watch. And, man, I'm just incredibly happy about Eric Daly Jr. because we've seen him. He's had just some stinkers this year, and it's made no sense. And I was kind of on the camp, where I'm like, if this guy puts it together, I see this guy as an all Big Ten player, maybe not the first team, but like as a defender, maybe second or third team. And you saw just the Eric Daly that we've been waiting to see all year long. 14 points in the second half, two-way player, making plays. He had that dunk. Electric dunk to tie it 6-all, running the floor. It was just all the guys stepped up today. Trent Perry's making clutch free throws and clutch shots. You mentioned Booker. Bilodeau hit some tough as nails shots. You knew he was going to show up. And, this is a really, really good Fighting Illini's team. Like, I think they've got 4 Bilodeaus on that team that, are just as good, if not better, when you're talking about the Avicic brothers, Humrikis, Stojakovic, these types of dudes, they're all the same size as Bilodeau and can all shoot the rock very similarly. It was incredible, man. We came out with a 30-10 run in our own right to make it a close ball game. And just the fight this team showed to get up off the floor after 2 bone-crushing losses. I think this is an all-timer, man. In the immediate moment, given the shades, the replication of Edney, the most famous UCLA buzzer beater prior to this. I mean, this is outstanding. This is cinema, man. You can only write this in Hollywood, and lo and behold, that's where we are right now. No doubt about it, Thriller. And I'll tell you, the shades of Tyus. I mean, the comparison. Now, Edney, obviously, everyone, we have to remember that was second round NCAA tournament of that 95 national championship team that ended up cutting down the nets. Edney doesn't go coast to coast. The 95 team doesn't happen. So, significance of that one was just sort of off the charts. But when you compare the two plays, Thriller, you're talking about 4.9 here. It was about 3.9 with Edney. Same situation. You're sort of going across. You're going across the basket to take that inbounds pass because you're starting with sort of a head of steam. You go coast to coast. You make a move. Dent kind of goes right to left. Edney had that behind the back, to his strong side, the right side. Both of them kind of going off of the right side of the rim, shading the rim for that, larger defender, and then finishing it. It was absolutely spectacular. And Thriller, watching Dent's kind of reaction to me was just so special because, sometimes in that moment, guys are going to sort of add the swag or they're going to kind of do something that's a little bit more over the top to say, hey, I knew it was going in. There was a look of pure joy on Donovan Dent's face and even perhaps a little bit of surprise because to your point earlier, with all the bunnies that he missed in this game, and quite frankly, it's been a struggle all year with Donovan Dent finishing in the paint all year, all throughout Big Ten competition in particular. For him to finish one of those and it'd be the absolute biggest play of the season to be able to finish those. I mean, that's what you have to just love and admire from a poetic irony perspective, Thriller. And, I want to sort of double click back on what you said about, Daly Jr. And, he's in so many ways. You and I have talked about this for so long. The lifeblood of this team, the spark plug of this team, the transmission of this team, the engine of this team. His game is so predicated defense to offense. When he's playing great defense and then he's getting out in those passing lanes and he's able to finish,
around the rim and dunk in transition, then he's a more confident player. Then you see that three ball start falling for him. Then you see him sort of more decisive off the bounce. And you see that total floor game. And that's exactly what we saw, particularly in the second half tonight. It was his defense translating to offense. And Daly was the guy defensively. I think that was the real linchpin here, Thriller. Forcing, you said it best. I mean, Illinois is kind of a 1-9 basketball team. They are the absolute epitome of kind of modern college basketball and modern basketball. It's sort of 1-9. It's positionless. All the guys can shoot. All the guys are sort of comfortable with the rock. It's very interchangeable parts. If they were an NBA team, they'd be switching everything and playing pick and roll all day long. But again, for a team that's as skilled as Illinois is, you want to be able to make things uncomfortable for them. You want to at least contest those threes. You want them to run off the three-point line and put it on the deck and get into some secondary action. And I thought the last 30 minutes of the game, Thriller, win or lose, UCLA was able to do that. It just wasn't coming as easily to Illinois as it did in those first 10 minutes. And Daly was a huge part of that. And I think Daly's defense inspired Perry's defense. It inspired Dent's defense. It inspired Booker down low. So I think Daly was absolutely instrumental. This is the best version of UCLA, Thriller. We've talked about it. They're never going to be this group, kind of that top 2, top 3 defensive team that Mick has had in years past. But they have such a ceiling offensively when things are clicking because they have so many different weapons. They're a team that if the game can get into the high 70s, low 80s, that's the kind of game they can play where they can sort of play defense in critical moments and really bank on offensive execution. This is why we were so high on this group, Thriller. Yes, and obviously it was a lost week, with both of the Michigan schools, particularly with everything that happened with Jamerson. But, here we are, 2 top 10 wins, really tough performance early in the season against Arizona. Look, home for SC, that's a very winnable game. Then you got another resume game here, home for Nebraska. But, even if you're able to sort of split these final 4, you get to 12-8, Thriller, in the Big Ten. With these 2 signature wins and the quality of the Big Ten, you're in. This was a season-defining victory for the Bruins of UCLA. And look, this is March. We talk about what happened in 2021. As long as you get into the dance, anything can happen. Absolutely anything can happen.
And Donovan Dent, man, it's been such an up and down year for this guy. The highs have been so high, but the lows have been, beneath the floorboards, it feels like. It has just been hit or miss. And I think a moment like this, when you hit a game winner, and it just feels like the monkey kind of coming off your back a little bit after going coast to coast and making that play. I just think this could be the game, the moment that propels us to seeing the Donovan Dent we've been waiting for since November. And the thing I will give Donovan Dent credit for always is, even if the shot's not falling, wasn't a great, shooting performance from him today. How he gets his teammates involved, it's almost worth the money. I mean, one of those passes, he did the over-the-head pass to Bilodeau for the easy dunk. I was like, woo, we are cooking with gas right now. I let out a Ric Flair woo on my couch.
No doubt. And that one Thriller that he had to Booker was maybe even more impressive. I mean, that was sort of falling out of bounds. That was almost sort of a no-look over his head to Booker for that finish. I mean, the fact that because that wasn't one that you even saw him there. That was all feel. That was all feel that you knew. You trusted your pick and roll game. You knew you had kind of that weak side action. You had that trailer. And, man, to have the basketball instincts in that moment to make a play. UCLA was down by 1 in that moment. Crunch time, Booker finishes with a great dunk to push it back up 1. Man, that's so well said, Thriller, because the shot hasn't been falling for Dent most of the year, whether it's been the bunnies inside, whether it's been the 3-ball. It has not been falling. But the one thing that has been true to Donovan Dent, it has not affected his playmaking. And it has not affected his attitude and his relentlessness to play his game. Some guys, Thriller, when the shot isn't falling consistently or your go-to isn't really happening, what happens? We see it all the time in college. You start reverting away from your option 1, option 2 skill set. You start doing other things. You start retreating. Maybe you start pressing in other areas. Maybe you get a little bit more disengaged. Not Donovan Dent. Dent is someone who's going to enforce and impose his style of play on a game, win or lose. And whether the shot is falling and whether it's not, you know the game you're going to get with Donovan Dent. You don't always know the results. You don't always know the output, but you know the game that you're going to get. And I think that, to me, is so significant.
And that last possession, just such a microcosm of what he brings. It's the quickness, the handle, and the confidence he has. And,
totally.
The shooting has been kind of an anomaly. I think we're all a part of the rest of the fan base just kind of stunned because this guy was a 40% three-point shooter at New Mexico a year ago. It's about 18% right now as it currently stands. But, man, if we get that lightning quick Donovan Dent, I know the hamstring issue kind of hampered him at the beginning of the season. If that's the version of Dent we get moving forward, watch out. This team lives and dies with its $3 million man. We need Dent out there running and gunning with the offense and getting the Bruins back to the top, baby. Nebraska game. It's coming up March 3rd, another top 10 opponent. And, I mean, hey, man, I'm just going to throw it out there. We have the same coach that this occurred with a few years ago. The last 4 in, UCLA gets hot. We go to the Final Four with Mick Cronin, lose on a miracle prayer shot from Mr. Jalen Suggs. If you beat Nebraska and you start just piling up little confident wins here and there, and maybe you go in the Big Ten tournament, beat another team maybe you're not supposed to beat. Like the Michigan State games to me were kind of anomalies because we lost to Arizona, it was close. We lost to Gonzaga, it was somewhat close. Those were like, we just didn't even look like the same team. This might be a program salvaging victory, not only for the players on this team, but for Mick Cronin moving forward, man.
No, Thriller, I totally agree with you. And I think the schedule is set up very nicely. And I think coming off this type of a game, to have your rival on Tuesday night at home again in Pauley, I think is sort of a magical. I think we are. I think it's going to be sort of magical to have that game right now, because you're talking about the game. And how many times has a Mick team, you mentioned, obviously the Suggs one is the most famous, but how many times has a Mick team lost on a buzzer beater? I mean, you're talking about how many times in the regular season, even it's a SC a few times, even earlier in his career, other conference games. So, this was sort of the basketball gods kind of giving it back a little bit. But I think you nailed it, Thriller. You got SC at home. They're reeling a little bit, had a really tough showing tonight against Oregon. There's a big momentum opportunity here to back up this victory. Nothing like playing your rival. You beat your rival. Now you're geeked up. You're juiced up even more. You get to 11-6 in the Big Ten. And now here you are hosting Nebraska. And Thriller, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago before I got sick, look, you said, well, what's the record going to be, these 5 games? And we said, look, the Michigan games are going to be hard, and as much as I wanted it to be kind of 1-1, I was like, look, Michigan was going to be a really tough game regardless, because it's a bad matchup, Thriller, at the end of the day. I mean, you got 3 guys that are north of 6'10".
In the country. I know they lost
3 guys north of 6'10", and UCLA is a smaller team, and playing up there, it's a bad matchup. That you knew that was going to be one-way traffic, and it was, and it was unfortunate. We were hoping it was going to be more of an effort, but there wasn't a high expectation when you've got a team that's as good, as skilled as Michigan, when it's a bad matchup on the road. I think the game that got everyone sort of in a bit of a frenzy was the Michigan State game, because you knew that was going to be a little bit more of an attainable game. Michigan State lost some games, over the last 10 days where you felt like, okay, they're sort of coming back to the pack. Now you've kind of adjusted to life on the road in a Michigan environment. Michigan State is going to be a better showing. And then obviously all hell broke loose with Cronin, self-sanctioning Jamerson and everything that sort of came about from that. But we had said, look, Illinois was going to be a potentially winnable game at home. If you take away a very questionable call in that Indiana game, Thriller, UCLA is undefeated at home, so now you get Nebraska at home. Nebraska, for as well coached as they are, as well as they play, they don't have the same level of firepower as Illinois does. They don't have the same level of firepower as Purdue does. That's another winnable game, folks. And to your point, if you stack up a third top 10 game, you got all three of them at home, you get to 12 wins in the Big Ten. Thriller, not only are you going to clinch an opportunity to be in the NCAA tournament, but this is where playing in the Big Ten Conference and playing in this gauntlet prepares you. This is the type of resume. How many times have we seen in years past an 8 seed, a 9 seed from like a really powerful conference end up making a run in the NCAA tournament? Because they've been so battle tested over the course of the year. You got the number one team in the country. I know they lost to Duke tonight, but that's a top-notch title contending team. You got Purdue, you got Illinois, you got Michigan State, you got Nebraska. You got 5 teams essentially that are top 10 teams in this conference that you have to go through. So you're going to be so battle tested and prepared going into the NCAA tournament, and everything's a neutral site game, right? I mean, what was the thing that made that Arizona performance so special? It was neutral site. You know, at Michigan was going to be tough, at Michigan State's going to be tough, but now everything's going to be neutral site. And outside of Michigan, you don't have this inherently flawed matchup either. So you're going to line up and lace them up, play really hard. And this version of UCLA, Thriller, like we talked about at the start of the season, this has been a maddening team, a preseason number 12 team that we felt had Final Four aspirations. I still believe the right version of this team, if they show up, can beat anybody in the country on any given night. And that's what March is all about.
I do too, man. And I think everything happens for a reason. I think moments like this cannot be ignored in terms of momentum, because all we know in sports is one little thing happens. I remember the Seahawks on the Fail Mary. They go and win the Super Bowl that year, or, little things like that, just in the moments of sports and time. We've seen Kemba Walker hitting the game winner at the Garden, riding that to a national championship. I think my ceiling for this team is, Sweet 16. Now that I saw this, I am back to believing that this team is capable of doing some big things. The Michigan loss was bad, but like you mentioned, that's arguably the best team in the country. Like, our big losses. I mean, we've lost to Arizona and Michigan and some of these schools where who else has beaten them? They've had like 4 combined losses the entire year between the two teams. And Michigan State, I mean, it was just Tom Izzo needing a win at home, and he's going to get that every time because he's a top 10 coach in the sport's history. You know what I mean? So I just think if we can ride this, man, bottle up the mojo, if you will, from Mr. Austin Powers, we got something here, man. We got something. We are staying and we are believing in the Bruins. I can't believe I'm saying this. We were down 33-10 in this freaking ball game, man. It's unbelievable.
No, it's unbelievable, Thriller. And this is where I don't know if we've ever quite had a period like this in the history of UCLA basketball, because, Cronin is an inherently flawed coach. There's just no question about it. When you talk about his offensive imagination and lack thereof, and when you talk about his demeanor with his players, at least on the court from a demonstrative perspective, he's inherently flawed. There's just no question about it. And long-term viability of Mick's style of coaching in this future era of college basketball, where NIL is so paramount, where the transfer portal is so paramount, and there's so much power with the players, you really wonder if Mick Cronin is the long-term solution for UCLA. And I still very much believe he's on the hot seat, and I think he's got the end of this season and next season to truly prove himself, whether or not, 2021 was an anomaly and 2023 was an anomaly, and really look at these next 3 years. I mean, so I think he's very much still on the hot seat. I think he's going to get until the end of next year, given where the state of the buyout is, and the buyout becomes much more digestible next April. But the one thing that's sort of undeniable is every time, no matter how much I dislike it personally, and I know you do too as well, no matter how much I dislike the fact that he calls out his players, he runs them under the bus, he runs them in traffic, they respond after he does that. And so there's something there, I mean, again, this whole thing with Jamerson, everyone's sort of wondering what's going through his mind. You know, you're hearing them talk about it in the telecast. They start off 33-10. I mean, you're thinking this thing is totally unraveled, and they've quit on him. And lo and behold, from 23 down, they come back and win a dramatic game. We saw it, you know, last year after he famously kind of called out the players, won 6 in a row. We saw it earlier this year when he called out the players, won 5 out of 6. So there's something there. No matter how much it sort of offends us, no matter how much it feels very, very counterintuitive from a recruiting standpoint, I still have deep concerns about Mick's ability to recruit high-end talent in the state of California. And when you look at where UCLA's recruiting class is going into next season, I'm deeply concerned. I think he's a fundament from a recruiting, relationship, offensive imagination standpoint. He is fundamentally flawed. Now, the question becomes, can his strengths outweigh that to get UCLA basketball to a place where we expect it to be on a perennial basis, which is where Duke is, which is where UConn is perennially, and which is where Houston has now become perennially, and so on and so forth. That's the big question, and I think that's going to reveal itself here, Thriller, over the course of this March and over the course of next season. But it is very remarkable where a guy who's so flawed, a guy who's so willing to sort of go after his players, they respond. And so, you know, maybe he does have the right formula of players, but you got to wonder, you know, what's the shelf life of that?
And I want to ask you this to kind of pivot. What final scenario for UCLA basketball this year cools the seat down a little bit for you? Because we've been in the camp. You know, the buyout is the buyout. There's nothing we can do as a fan base to control that. The last 3 years has been complete underperforming from UCLA basketball. But what scenario, final scenario for UCLA basketball? We've seen his teams get hot in the postseason before. What is that round or that level that UCLA can attainably get to where you're like, you know what? It was a chaotic year, but he got us this far. I'm going to get, you know, I'm off the hot seat. I think he's all right.
Thriller, I think the bar, and I think some great comments here by Gracker 7921. I totally agree with you there on how Mick managed this game. The way Mick managed this game was different. I still don't think the offensive imagination is sort of anywhere near where it needs to be. But yes, he managed the game very, very well in terms of effectively using his timeouts to really stave off the Illinois momentum, restabilize his team, and really sort of talk to, you know, his players in an effective way. And I thought the play call at the end of regulation was a really good one. And I think Bilodeau just didn't pop hard enough. And that, you know, you even saw it sort of in the telecast where Cronin's, you know, sort of looking at him after the play. And it's like, what are you doing? You got to really pop there. I thought that was a really nice play call on just, you know, high pick and pop with your two sort of playmakers, your two leaders. And then, you know, he called a heck of a game. That was a great play call at the end. And he looked confident, too. He looked really confident in that huddle. Like he had a play. Like he knew with 4.9, they were going to really have a chance. So you got to give Mick a lot of credit there. It is funny. It does feel like he's his best when his back is absolutely against the wall, when everyone is against him. And he feeds off of that. He feeds off of that role of being the villain. I don't know whether it's because he's short or whether it's because he's bald, or whether it's because he's short and bald. But whatever the reason is, he just has this sort of short man complex whenever his back is against the wall, and he delivers amazing things. Thriller, for me to have the seat not be warm going into next year, they got to make the Final Four.
Wow.
And so that flat out, period. For the seat not to be warm at all. To me, short of that, there's going to be questions. You know, and so they've got to, with a $3 million point guard, with an all-conference performer like a Tyler Bilodeau, who's been a decorated all-conference performer even before he showed up here, with a 5-star kid in Perry, with another all-conference defensive performer in Eric Daly Jr., when you're talking about an experienced, seasoned, double-digit veteran in Sky Clark, when you're talking about a talented big man like Booker, you look at that roster, Thriller. Yeah, he's got to make the Final Four for me to say his seat isn't warm at all. But what needs to happen for his seat to be kind of somewhat warm and not, you know, kind of as hot as it was this week? We got to feel like we're close. And I don't want to put a round on that because depending on the seeding, you're going to get a very, very high seed early in the tournament, right? Like if you're an 8 or a 9, you're going to get a 1 potentially in the second round. If you're a 10, you're going to get a 2 in the second round potentially if you win the first round game. So I don't necessarily want to put a round to it because you're going to play a national title contender, potentially game 2 of the tournament. But I want to feel like we're close. And if we feel like we're close to that absolute upper echelon level, then I'll feel like his seat's still warm, but it's not the way it's been over the last 8 to 10 days. But for the seat thriller to be, not warm at all and be cool, for me, it's got to be a Final Four.
Yeah, it's a fair comment. He recruited the roster. He has to deal with the consequences of his team not living up to his standards. And we've commented on the recruiting. It just frankly hasn't been great under Mick Cronin these past few years. I think for me, if you got to a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8, you somehow max out at those points, I'll quiet down a little bit. Like you said, there's still question marks moving forward. But for how chaotic this year was to still be a top 16, top 8 team in the country, kind of where they were, scheduled to be, right? Top 12 team is what they were on paper coming in this year. If you get the Sweet 16, pull a nice upset, a memorable upset, kind of like today, I'll quiet down a little bit. I'll be able to, kick my feet up a little bit and be like, you know what? You got to where I assumed you were going to be at. I'm cool with it. And it all hasn't been his fault. Like we've talked about, the Dent injury was huge. I think, some of the players were just inconsistent. Daly, we talked about, just had some absolute stinkers who you thought was going to be an all-conference performer. It just hasn't gone its way. And, I think the best part we can close on here, Madman, is you never know. The tournament, March, it's the craziest time of the year for a specific reason. And boy, the UCLA Bruins just got a shot of adrenaline to the team, to the fan base, to the ball club. Let's freaking go. Madman, any closing thoughts before we do the sleeper ad and get on out of here?
Well, Thriller, first of all, it's just great to see you. It's been a gnarly couple of weeks for me. I know you were at the Super Bowl. Man, I was so sick. I've been sick as a dog for like 12 days. I've had this viral infection and then had a little bit of travel on top of that. Holy cow, man. This has been like, I've lost like 20 pounds in the last like 15 days. It's been a rough, last 2 weeks. So it's so great to be back on, obviously, and talking about our beloved Bruins like no other. But these are the moments, Thriller, where this is what makes college basketball so special. It's these moments where you have these ebbs and flows in the season. And there's something, you said it, about these Mick Cronin seasons that are like roller coasters, and it just, you're up, you're down, you're all the way around. And he sort of loves it, and it's kind of that famous line, right? Like, if it ain't rough, it ain't right. Cronin is just that kind of guy. And, sort of no better coach in many ways than to be in Hollywood, because it's such a script. It's such a, it's a Netflix show. It's a movie. It's just all of these up and downs. But we're in a moment here. This is a moment. This win, if this team can harness what transpired here, not just in terms of the finish from Dent, but in terms of how they were able to dig deep being down 23 and have the clarity of thought and have the presence of mind and have the calmness and spirit to come back in that game. If they can channel that final 10 minutes of the first half against Illinois, because remember, it went from 23-7 by halftime, Thriller. The lion's share of the work was done in the first half in that second 10 minutes. That 10 minutes, if they can harness that and say, that's who we want to be from now until we're no longer allowed to play this season, that version of this team can play and compete with absolutely anybody in the country. And that's what makes college basketball so special, because some teams kind of crack their code from game one. Some teams crack their code in the preseason when they're sort of working. Other teams crack their code at different points. Sometimes it's game 15. Sometimes it's game 25. Sometimes it's game 30. It feels like tonight UCLA cracked their code. And now if they can use that code moving forward, this is how epic runs are built in March. We had an epic one in 2021. We felt like we were going to have an epic one in 2023. It's 2026, the year that we have yet another epic one.
Donovan Dent and these Bruins to the moon. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a blast. Make sure you guys download the Sleeper app. Get a $100 deposit to match up to $100 using code UCLA LAFB. And guys, you can put some wagers on those freaking Bruins going farther than we think they can right now. Given this win, given this shot of adrenaline, shocked back to life, as we like to say on this show. Bruin Bible, you guys are the greatest. Have a drink, have a laugh, kick your feet up. This is an all-time win in UCLA lore. It's meant to be enjoyed. Much love, guys. We will be back after the USC game. I think Madman and I are going to try to go to that too. So if we see you guys out loud and proud, 4's up forever, guys. What a day.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.